Thank you, Malaz. Just one quick correction is that the School of Physical Education and Tourism Management is no more. And we combined with the School of Health and Rehab Sciences, and we are now the School of Health and Human Sciences as of July 1. So it's the newest school on campus. So my presentation title is Exercise, Why Bother, What Counts, and How Do We Get People to Do It? And I thought I would start by telling you what I'm not talking about today. So usually when I start talking about exercise and physical activity, people jump to losing weight and weight management. And I'm not talking about that today. The reason I'm not talking about that today is because of this study that was published about 20 years ago. It was the first fit versus fat study, and it looked at the relative risk of all-cause mortality across BMI categories. So if you look at this figure, you'll see that people who are lean or have a BMI of less than 17 compared to people who are normal weight and have a BMI of 17 to less than 25, compared to people who are overweight and obese, who have a BMI of 25 or greater, are similar across cardiorespiratory fitness categories, have the same relative risk of mortality. And so you can be overweight or obese and have good cardiovascular fitness and still lower your risk of dying. So I'm talking about physical activity and exercise and not weight. Similarly, I'm not talking about nutrition. And although eating healthy is good for you and will improve your longevity, again, regardless of what you eat, you will experience benefits from physical activity separate from nutrition. Unless you're trying to lose weight, then you have to diet. But if you're not, just exercise. So what I'm going to do today is talk about why bother first, and then I'll talk about what counts. And then I'm going to ask you the question of how do we get people to do it? And I will present some things that we've tried that have had some success, but we still haven't figured out that question. So I thought I would pose it to some of the smartest people and most creative, innovative people I know. So maybe you can tell me what we're doing wrong. So again, today I'm discussing physical activity and exercise, and these are two related but separate terms that I thought I would define for you. And so physical activity is defined as any bodily movement that uses large muscle groups and increases heart rate and respiration. Separately, exercise is a specific form of physical activity that improves one or more domains of fitness, which are muscular strength and endurance, cardiovascular fitness, flexibility, and body composition. So you exercise to improve one of those categories. So here's my first and favorite slide about why bother, and I'll just read you a quote from Bill Roberts that says, exercise is an agent of lipid lowering, antihypertensive, positive inotropic, negative conotropic, vasodilating, diuretic, anorexigenic, weight reducing, cathartic, hypoglycemic, tranquilizing, hypnotic, and antidepressive qualities. It also prevents osteoporosis and certain types of cancer. Now, for those of you in the room who prescribe, if you could prescribe this pill, would you not give it to every one of your patients? And for the rest of us who are at risk of developing these conditions, and that's everybody, wouldn't you take this pill every morning if somebody prescribed it to you? Of course you would. So why don't people exercise? Why aren't they physically active? I don't get it. Okay, so more about why bother. So there's strong evidence, and still people are like, how do you know that stuff on the previous slide? Well, there's research that supports that stuff on the previous slide. And so there's strong evidence that exercise prevents premature death, coronary artery disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, breast and colon cancer, anxiety and depression, weight gain and being overweight, having low cardiorespiratory and muscular fitness, falling for older adults, and cognitive impairment. There's moderate to strong evidence that exercise improves functional health, reduces abdominal obesity, and aids in weight maintenance after weight loss. And then there's moderate evidence that it lowers the risk of hip fracture, increases bone density, exercise improves sleep quality, and lowers the risk of lung and endometrial cancer. There's also evidence that's not presented on this slide that it improves sexual function, and it improves pregnancy. It also improves job performance. So across the board, there's evidence to support these factors. So more about why bother. If you look at the relative hazard risk ratio of a first myocardial infarction, and I'll just use my pointer, and you look at people who are inactive, who participate in activity for about 30 minutes to 2 hours a week, and for people who participate in activity for more than 2 hours a week, at normal and abnormal ECG, there's significant difference among those who are relatively inactive compared to those who are active, with activity accounting for only 2 hours a week. That's it. Another why bother slide. And so this looks at men and women with low, moderate, or high cardiorespiratory fitness and their cumulative incidence of depression. And the odds of reporting depressive symptoms were low for people in moderate and high categories of fitness. It was 31% lower for men with moderate cardiorespiratory fitness and 51% lower for men with high cardiorespiratory fitness, 44% lower for women with moderate cardiorespiratory fitness, and the incidence of depression was 54% lower for women with high cardiorespiratory fitness. This was measured by VO2 max on the treadmill, and each additional minute of treadmill test duration was associated with a 5% lower odds of reporting depressive symptoms at follow-up for both men and women. So I'm still trying to convince you. Exercise has been proved to show to improve dementia, and those who exercise 3 or more times per week were more likely dementia-free than those who exercised fewer than 3 times per week. And then this is my last why bother slide, because I only have about 20 minutes before I pick your brains. But this study looked at walking speed in old men and the risk to die. So we've all seen this. I'll just demonstrate it. Those people are at higher risk for mortality. And so this study, when the initial walking speed for men who were older than age 70 were tested, and participants were followed for 5 years to look at mortality rates. And men who walked more than 1.86 miles per hour were 23% less likely to die than those who walked more slowly. So that's your goal, guys. 1.86 miles per hour. You got to walk faster than that. But men who walked 3 miles per hour, none of them died during the follow-up period. So walk fast wherever you're going. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what counts, because again, how do we get people to do it? People are like, oh, exercise is boring, or it hurts, or I don't have time to do this. And so I've got some things listed. So first of all, the American College of Sports Medicine recommends that we perform at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity most days of the week, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity physical activity each week. And so I've got listed for you what counts. Things like line dancing, biking on flat surface, canoeing, general gardening, so raking or trimming shrubs, sports where you have to catch or throw, tennis, using a manual wheelchair, using cycles or cycle ergometers or arm ergometers, walking briskly or water aerobics. These are all moderate activities. There are many, many others. These are just some examples. And so if you clean your house, mopping and dusting counts. So these things count, and still, how do we get people to do it? Some vigorous activities include aerobic dance, biking faster than 10 miles per hour or uphill, fast dancing, heavy gardening like digging or hoeing, hiking up a hill, jumping rope, martial arts, race walking, jogging or running, sports that require a lot of running, swimming, fast laps, and singles tennis. So these are activities that some of us enjoy that also count as moderate to vigorous physical activity or exercise. More about what counts. Combinations of moderate and vigorous exercise are encouraged. Physical activity should be performed in 10-minute bouts. It's preferable that physical activity be spread throughout the week so that our hearts are beating fast multiple times a day, every day, and that we perform muscle strengthening exercises 2 or more times a week. So my last bit of slide is the last couple of slides before I ask you how do we get people to do it, is what we've told people. We've told them the truth about physical activity and exercise. We told them it's good for you, and I've presented the evidence that hopefully I've convinced you that physical activity and exercise are good for you. We've told people you're helping the environment. So if you're driving, you're creating air pollution. And so by driving, you're polluting the environment, but you're also helping the social environment when you're physically active because you're out in your communities and you're walking and you're running and you're engaging with your neighbors. So in that way, you're improving the environment. I told you some things that count. So if you're picking up trash in your community to beautify your neighborhood, or if you're mowing your yard or gardening to beautify your home environment, this all counts. So you're helping the environment if you're physically active, and we've told people that. You're also saving money. So for those of us who have to pay to park on this campus, if we rode our bikes, it would be free. Or if we walked to campus, it would be free. Or for those of you who don't have to pay, you would be saving Regenstrief money. They could put that money elsewhere in your pockets instead of paying for parking. So it is expensive. Gas costs money, oil costs money, car maintenance costs money. And so being physically active actually saves money. And you're helping your friends and family. How so? Well, if you're healthy and you're active and you're strong, they don't have to take care of you and you're better equipped to take care of them. So just some simple truths about why you should be physically active that are bigger than just you. And we've told people this. It doesn't really work. That still hasn't done much to motivate people to increase their physical activity or to start exercising. So we got this bright idea that we would ask physicians to refer their patients to exercise or to start discussing exercise. And this is a very busy slide of a poster that I'm going to present later on this month at the American College of Sports Medicine annual meeting. But Eric Eimel and I asked Lauren Lemke to look at ICD codes for lack of physical exercise and for exercise counseling since these codes have existed, so over about a 20-year period. And we first asked to look, like, are these codes ever used? And if you look at all patients, these codes were used about 54,000 times. Then I said, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder how many for adults and how many for children. And since my research is with adults, I just asked her to poll adults, and it was about 10% of all of the time. And I said, oh, that's interesting. How many times were these codes used for patients with conditions that could be improved with physical activity and exercise? Not very many. We looked at type 2 diabetes, hypertension, insomnia, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and BMI. And so, again, it was a good idea. We still have work to do in that area. So it's not yet helped to ask physicians to discuss physical activity and exercise with their patients. And so we've also tried countless motivation techniques. So we've tried to adjust the built environment to make communities more walkable. We've tried traffic calming measures so that people feel more safe on their bikes. We've created bike lanes. We've tried the internal environment. So Regenstrief, for example, has this beautiful skid staircase and a really slow, awful elevator, which is a micro environment that would encourage people to use the stairs. So we've done that. And lots of interventions around using stairs and not using the elevator, and encouraging people to walk to the bathroom that's a little bit more further away to increase their steps throughout the day. So we've tried microenvironment interventions. We've done worksite wellness programs and school-based programs. We've tried to introduce more physically active playgrounds. We've tried with social support with gaming, with sports, shopping. So people like to go to the mall and shop. It requires physical activity to lift and carry those bags. Try to encourage people to do laps around the mall, to cross shop in the grocery store. So go to the produce first and then go to the frozen foods and then go back to the cereal, and just increase your steps in the grocery store with things you're doing anyway. We've tried to change people's attitudes. So to think about what counts, and that exercise doesn't always have to hurt, and that physical activity doesn't always have to be bad or boring, to get them to exercise. We've said, walk your dog, go play catch with your dog, run around the yard with your dog, get your pets involved, so play with your pets. I didn't put up here, play with your kids, and I have 4 of them. I don't know why I didn't, but play with your children, play with your grandchildren. We've tried reminders and prompts. And so for those of us who are wearing activity trackers, we get tapped for 50 minutes of the hour, every hour, to get up and move around. And we've tried that for interventions. We've tried the activity trackers and exercise snacks. So I told you before that the recommendation is 10 minutes. Okay, so you can't do 10 minutes. 10 minutes is actually a long time. So could you do it for 1 minute? And that's considered an exercise snack or an activity break. So we've tried that. I talked about chores, like just clean your house. Everybody has to clean their house, so just do that. Journaling, so keep it on your calendar so you can look back and see what you're doing or what you're not doing. And we've even tried making a competition. Like, I bet you can get in more steps than your husband, and try to get people to be more physically active that way. And what I call this is failing forward. So some of these things have improved physical activity participation. When I talked about this 10 years ago, about 23% of the population was meeting the physical activity guidelines based on self-report. And we know that self-report isn't the best, but it's what we have right now in terms of surveillance. Today, if we look at the percent of adults who achieve at least 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity aerobic physical activity, or 75 minutes a week of vigorous and intensity aerobic activity, or some combination that's meaningful, and we look at the states like Indiana and Kentucky, we're not doing as well, but we're doing better than we used to. Who's a little bit better? Our states, our neighboring states of Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois. And then as we get to like at least half or more of the people are meeting the physical activity guidelines, you kind of have to go to Wisconsin or West, and the only state in the East that's really getting it done is Vermont. So still a lot of work to do, but again, I say that we are failing forward. And this BRFSS map just shows who's meeting the guidelines that I presented on the last slide, but additionally, who's doing this muscle strengthening exercises that are required for physical health. And the numbers are smaller. And so how do we get people to move more? It's my question to you. I've got about 10 minutes, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about what I've said today, why you're not exercising, and what we can get you or people you know to move more. That's my last slide, guys, so go ahead.
Are there generational differences in the percentages of people doing the activity?
There are differences based on demographics. So it's different that as we age. So kids are more active than high school youth, who tend to be more active. As we age, our physical activity declines until we get to be older adults, and then there's an uptick. And we think it's related to retirement or having more free time.
So one suggestion that has worked for me personally, I don't know if it would for others, is I make it a point to have walking meetings. If we're going to meet in the office or the conference room, and there's no reason for us to be sitting. I have found several routes on campus that are warm or cold weather permissible to walk pretty much. Once you get into Riley, you can make it all the way to the campus center without going outside, and back and forth. It's a 30-minute round trip. A 60-minute meeting could be 2 round trips, and I do 1 or 2 of those a day if I can. And at least for me, and everyone now knows when they meet with me to bring their tennis shoes. And you got to change the culture. And we've sustained this now for about a year or 2. So
how's it received?
Behind my back, they probably joke about it, going, we shouldn't meet with him because he's going to make us walk. But no one ever says no when I say, do you want to walk?
Okay. Over here and then,
NiCole, how do I personally, how can I measure myself to fit in like the low, medium, and high category so I can sort of evaluate myself? Is it like resting heart rate, or is it like max? Like, how are simple ways that like a normal lay person can, look at themselves and make changes?
so resting heart rate would be the way to do it without equipment. And there are standards for what your resting heart rate should be based on your cardiorespiratory fitness. And that's a really good point that I hadn't actually thought of, that people don't know what category they're in. So that's a really great point too, that just letting them know what their risk of dying might be based on the area of the level of fitness they currently have might be motivational. So it's a great question.
I've found that all the reasons you gave for why bother don't really motivate me. What motivates me is that it makes me feel better. It makes me feel happier, less depressed immediately. And also it just, it makes my body feel better too. I have taken a therapeutic walk when I knew that if I sat down, I was gonna be too stiff to do anything later, just from overexertion. So I think we focus on how the exercising will make you feel versus being healthy and all these other things. People are taking drugs to feel better. This is a drug that you take to feel better versus healing yourself. You know what I mean? Immediate feeling better. So that's been what appeals to me the most.
So like many people in this room, myself included, you drank the Kool-Aid and you liked the way it tasted, but that's not true for everyone. Some people don't feel better after they exercise. They actually initially feel worse because they've been sedentary for so long. And so how to demonstrate to people that that's going to go away and it's actually going to get better and what you're doing is good for you is a great point. For people who used to do it, if I can get them to remember how enjoyable it was and how good they felt, that seems to work. But for people who haven't done it since they were 12, it seems a little bit harder. Somebody in the back and then NiCole.
Hi, I've found that peer accountability has really helped a lot for people that I coach. And so with peer accountability, you try to match people who are actually physical peers. So they're the coming from a similar background of an activity background, and they incentivize each other. It's not a competition, but basically, and it can't be a family member because family members will let you slide, or you'll just take advantage of it. It has to be outside your family. And I've actually thought about something like Tinder, like an exercise Tinder, where people could get matched, in a way that their physical traits are similar, their goals are similar, their speeds are similar, and then their geographic location.
I like that idea, and we've been discussing a lot about social groups, but I like this Tinder idea. I like that a lot.
I liked your distinction between physical activity and exercise. I thought about it, but when you think about it, it almost requires a paradigm shift to some degree, right? Because some of this is time dependent in the sense that we now have more and more sedentary jobs, and even kids are more and more sedentary in the daytime, and their activities are more based around screens than they are about things that are outside. And so I think this sort of shift of people who used to be physically active because it was just part of their occupation and sort of what they did all day, versus those of us now who have to make a point of doing it, that's when it sort of feels like exercise. And I wonder if the paradigm shift is more like, we do it like, most of us, you shower, you brush your teeth. It's almost like you exercise too, because we know that we're not going to get that type of physical activity throughout the day. So I wonder if it's more of like, the idea of, you schedule it as part of your, as part of what you do when you get up. We teach kids sort of how to, get themselves ready. You just sort of build it into the daily routine. And it's been kind of a strategy, I guess, that I've done, is I sort of schedule it like a meeting, rather than seeing it as something different. Like my day doesn't end until it happens, or it doesn't start till it happens.
Great comments. I think Sean first and then back to Cindy.
So obviously, if this were a simple problem, it would have been solved by now. And the fact that you're talking about it, I think, is important. And there have been some great, ideas and suggestions already thrown out. So I'm just going to say something that I don't think has been said clearly, maybe implicitly, but human beings do what they value, right? And so some people don't value their health. Some people value other things in life besides their health. And so understanding what people value is probably going to help understand where exercise is in their life. And so I don't, there's an educational component to this, certainly, to change values, but I mean, we are motivated by the things that we value. And ask anybody who exercises regularly what they value, and they're going to be talking about health and, the positive aspects. Those are high on their priority list. And I mean, it's never been sort of, some people do value and wish they could do it. And there are obvious, maybe they're in a wheelchair and they want to run, they can't do that. But I just think it seems obvious to me that getting at people's values, which often they don't want to share, they're very private, personal things, but look at a person's, checkbook, if anybody still has those. You can tell what a person values by looking at what they spend their time and money on. And I think this is largely a value issue.
Thanks. Go ahead, Cindy.
It's me again. So I think we have to look at breaking the cycle of inactivity. And, this demographic that's sitting here, when we have to work, when we work 8-hour days and we're sitting, we get mentally fatigued. And then we go home and we're mentally tired. It's the mental fatigue that, like, I'm just too tired to exercise. So if people can break that cycle during the day, go for a walking meeting, go outside, do something, if you don't have to look at a computer to have a meeting, if you can just go walk and have a meeting, it makes a huge difference. So if there's some way you can break that cycle of inactivity, I think people will be more open, and they won't be as mentally tired because they've got the physical refresh to try to break that cycle.
Thank you. I'm going to make the final comment, and it's kind of a funny memory as I was listening to Cindy talk. And the first time I entered this room, the building was still under construction, and I saw that giant window up there, and whoever was giving me the tour, the tour, said, "This is where the WIP's going to be." And I said, "We can exercise while we watch the WIP?" And they were like, "Oh no, we're going to smoke over that, so that doesn't happen." And I was like, darn. So it would have been such a good idea, but probably pretty distracting to the speakers. Well, I thank you, and I thank you for your great ideas.